our first open office hours at the Fiddle Jam Institute. I'm glad you're along for the ride. I'm not sure if this will be a whole hour, but let's see what we got. We got a lot of questions I've got from our members, and stuff I'd like to maybe talk a little about, just that I choose to. It's kind of cool. Maybe I'll catch one of the questions you have. And if you have more questions, please send them in. That's this idea. I'm going to do this every now and again. Hopefully maybe as things really get rolling, maybe once a week. For now, I'll try the first one, see how it goes. So open office hours means that you guys could submit stuff to me, questions, comments, and I talk about them here. Kind of look forward to this. All right, so what were some of the things that were asked about? All right, one, what is going to be the format of this? I've given it some thought, and I think I should do a little introduction, which I'm doing now, and tell you what we're going to be covered, and then maybe do something for each level, kind of beginner, intermediate, and more advanced, so that all of you can listen in on all of it, or skip ahead or back as you need to. In the old open, one-room schoolhouse, or ORSH method, where if you're a beginner and you can want to listen in on the advanced stuff, it kind of gets you an idea where you might want to go later, or where you are going with your education on the fiddle. And even if you're an advanced person, you listen to the beginnings, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that's how that goes. It's all good. We can, all of us, even advanced ones, can stand some reminders on some of the basics sometimes. Or if you're an advanced person, maybe you have students of your own and pick up a tip to how to teach, kind of thing. So, and at the end we'll do a little closing. So that's the 5 sections that I'm going to try and make the format for these open office hours. All right. So, welcome new subscribers. First off, that's the first thing on my list. We got a lot of people are signing up, which I'm thrilled about, and I haven't even done any advertising yet. So this is great. Just to finding us on Google or that kind of thing, or it's maybe many of you are hundreds now on subscribing to my YouTube channel. So that's great. Plan to do some Facebook advertising and some things coming up in the next month here, so I'm getting excited. The other thing is I want to mention is Riffmaster Pro software. The members already might know that I have a special deal with Riffmaster Pro that I don't benefit from at all, but it's passed on to you. They give us a special 40% off on their software. It's pretty cool software. It's a software plugin you can put on your computer. I think it's got a lesser version for like $4.95, an app for your phone. But the real deal one is $49 regular price, and for us it's like $27 or something with the discount. And there's a discount. We have a page right on the site. You can find it in the search box in the bottom, Riffmaster Pro. It should take you right to the page that we've set up with them so that you get the discount through us. All right. Now, what does it do? Well, it's for one, it can slow down or speed up if you want, up to 200%, any tune you have on your hard drive. So you drag and drop the tune into the software, and you can see the waveform. And if it's too fast, it's like for you to practice along, you can slow it down, like way down. It's crawling speed. Now, the cool thing about this software is some programs I've heard when you do that, it gets really warbly and jiggly sounding, and it's pretty awful. But this, somehow they've done it so that it doesn't sound so bad. It's not pristine, of course, if you're taking a digital thing and stretching it out and stuff, but it's way better than others that I've tried. And also has some other features. You can loop one section, like if you're just rehearsing one spot over and over, you can kind of put the beginning and end points, and it'll just keep going over and over that spot. You can also change the key without it getting too warbly. I've done this for myself when I'm working on some vocal tunes where, say a tune might be a female artist, and I'd like to sing that song. Well, it's just a little too high for me, so I bring it down a few keys. It's kind of like having a capo on your guitar or something, but digitally. And it doesn't sound bad. It doesn't sound bad at all. And they also have a feature, I know how this works digitally, but a vocal eliminator feature. And it's got a sliding scale, so you can kind of give more or less of its effect. How it actually works is, I've had to do this tricks for commercials, customers in studios before, where to do the quick explanation, music files are in stereo, left and right. It's 2 separate files, as some of you may know. And if there is something that's equal in both halves of the stereo mix, like say a vocal. A lot of times they're right down the center. They're not pan left or right. If you invert the phase of one of the sides, say keep it normal on the right, and on the left you invert it. There's usually a switch in some more advanced programs that do that. It'll actually cancel out anything that's in the middle, including the vocal. Sometimes there's other instruments too. But it keeps stuff like the drums, which usually pan left to right, and some things like that. So there's some tricks. Anyways, they must have done all those tricks in one slider on this, so it works pretty well. You can still hear a ghost of the vocal most often, but it helps. So you can get rid of the violin or whatever's in the middle. You can get rid of. Kind of simplifies. It's kind of like doing your own karaoke tracks in your own key. Kind of neat. Anyways, Riffmaster Pro. You get 40% off. I highly recommend it. There are others out there in the market for sure, but I recommend this one because it sounds better. It's pretty easy to use. All right. Some of you may know I did the Fiddle thing last month. I was featured again in their first free issue. Mike Spears did a thing before we sold them for $3.99, and he's changed his business model so that it's now free on iTunes. So check that out, Fiddle. And I provided a lesson about how to practice or not practice for improv. I thought I did a good job. Maybe you like it too. What else is on this list? Truck talks. I got a new truck talk out on the site about what it means to be a fan and whether that's healthy or not, or where to find the balance in being a fan and giving up your own power of your own creativity and that kind of stuff, where that stands. I just had some thoughts on that. Maybe you'll comment and help me, because I asked more questions than I did give more answers in that one. So, what it is to be a fan. Of course, the one-room schoolhouse we mentioned. So, and I'll dig right in here. What a lot of people ask about is my violin, my fiddle. It's a little bit unusual. It's got this gold leaf stuff on the sides that I've added recently. This is a late 1800s Stradivarius copy. It was not a super expensive instrument. My parents bought it for me when I was 12. It was my first full size. We rented, like a lot of people do, a lot of kids do. I rented smaller sizes until I grew to a full size. My parents said, okay, we'll buy you one. I think they paid $250 for it. So it wasn't a super high end or nothing. It was an okay instrument, and as I got into electric violins and became this rock and roll rebel, I always just kept this one acoustic fiddle around to play in church with my mom or that kind of stuff. And I decided to try a different bass bar, and I was kind of nervous about taking the top off and doing some internal work on this particular one. And I changed the bass bar, and it completely transformed this instrument into something pretty decent. And even when I've played in front of symphonies as a soloist now with Bob Eek and stuff, I have some of the symphony players come up and say, man, that violin sounds so good. I'm thrilled. It might have been worth $3,000 or $4,000 at one point until I dropped it off the stage and busted it in half and glued it back together. But I just keep it because now it's got the patina and it's got all these age marks, and it has a pretty decent sound. It's good enough for me. Yes, there are many instruments out there that probably sing a little better, but again, most of the time I'm just amplifying. So it sounds great to me. It sounds acoustically fine. There's a nice sweet tone with this different bass bar. I kind of did my own thing based off Peter Zaret's patents on bass bar technologies. I later got his permission to talk to you about that. So, the feathers, people always ask me about the feathers. Well, I'm very akin to American Indian philosophies and spiritual practices. That always rang true with me. The idea that man is not here to dominate the earth like the Western culture thinks, but here to be part of the earth. That's a pretty big shift for most people. I like that a lot. My wife is part Cherokee Indian, and for most part, that doesn't mean I'm Cherokee Indian, but it means that it's a good excuse for me to really show my feathers. So, it's just decoration. I kid kids in schools if they ask me about it. Hey, it helps me hold the fiddle up, kind of thing. Stupid jokes. But I encourage you to put bling on your instrument, whatever you think. I've had kids put those squeegee balls with those hairy, rubbery things. If you break them and bust open a spot, you can fit it right over the scroll. It's like this hairy scroll. Anything you want, whatever makes it fun. Now, classical teachers roll their eyes at me. As you know, I've encouraged people to paint their fiddles. I got some painted back here, that I painted. I think whatever it takes. If you're not worried about filling the auditorium acoustically, sure it affects the sound if you paint things and change things, but I say so what? Just get a pickup and plug in and play. You probably have more opportunity to play that way anyways. So some people will keep 2 fiddles, one just for acoustic classical stuff or bluegrass fiddling, and then another one for electric stuff. It's up to you. This fiddle does kind of all the above for me, and I also have electric fiddles too. So, and I'm also developing things, not to get too blabby about all this stuff. People ask about this too. You see that? My tailpiece. Yes, if I get it close enough, maybe you can see, it's actually carbon fiber hot rod setup with a piece of probably 3 million year old amber in it. This is something I do in my shop over there, the other side of that curtain. It's kind of a hobby, more or less. I'd love to be spending all the time in my shop tinkering. I'm a tinkerer. But it's not my reality. I run this website, which is important to me, and a top priority in life, besides personal things, and making money, putting food on the table, that kind of stuff, keep a roof over my head and my wife's head. And but out in the garage, I tinker on things. I have a mold. Carbon fiber is a great interest to me, and I may produce more of these and try and sell them with different jewels and crystals in them. That's my idea. I'm working on a cello tailpiece mold at this point too. I think it's kind of cool, and it's been on here a few years. This one stood the test of time too. Carbon fiber is pretty tough stuff, and this had to be carbon fiber to put a jewel that large in it. I did the same thing out of an ebony tailpiece, and it lasted about 2 days before it busted over here in the thin spot, blew off. So that's why I went to the carbon fiber. And carbon fiber is cool, anyways. I have this motor head part of me too. I like to ride a motorcycle, and if I ever get money, I can get myself a couple hot rod cars too. That'd be fun. Anyways, so that's it about my fiddle. It's pretty old, pretty beat up, but it sounds good. I had this idea for the gold leaf design on the side. It was my first shot at gold leaf, and it turned out not too good, honestly. I'm not going to show it to you too close, but pretty rough around the edges. I decided to keep it on there. It was fitting for this violin, and it shows that it's not a normal violin. It's not, and what I play is not normal. So that's part of it too for me. Part of it is just advertising. I pull my fiddle out and it looks a little different. People go, let's stay and listen to that guy. He looks interesting. Looks different. That's my idea. All right, maybe it'll be yours too. All right, now on to the beginner level stuff. Level 1. On the website, we've called this a few different things. Level 1, Level 101. I also call it the jammer level, because basically in the fiddle jam approach and philosophy, if you want to learn how to improvise, there is kind of 3 levels. And the first level is just use one scale and go nuts. I've talked about this in many places on the site. I'm not going to drag you through the mud on it. But that's a good philosophy. And it doesn't mean that's beginner really either. So this is one of those things that can transfer into all levels of players. I played in the group Gamelan, which I've said many times elsewhere, and we were basically a really good one-chord jam band in the late 80s and into the early 90s, and got all the way to being on the Billboard charts and playing the Newport Jazz Festival in front of 40,000 people. We were just really good at making it exciting. We'd start quiet and build up the dynamics and all these different things. And layer textures over it and stuff. We had all these other compositional techniques to make it exciting. Because one chord can get pretty boring if you just forever and goes nowhere. Yawn and people's attention goes away. But that band had a way of grabbing you and really making it intense, which is why we were so successful, I think. So the approach here at the Fiddle Jam Institute, as you well may know, is, and the whole idea behind the Fiddle Jam book was level 1 stuff, is one scale fits all. Now the background has to be the right background, of course, because in the real world not every tune can you do one scale fits the whole mess. But all the tracks in the book are set up that way. I know all the theory. I figured it all out ahead of time. I made sure the backgrounds were diatonic or kind of stayed in the same key so that you could do that. And and I tried to pick only keys that had an easy zone. So the easy zone is, for those of you who don't know, most of you should on this site. There's a page and what is an easy zone. Look on the site map, you find that. And it's basically two, not basically, exactly, it's the same fingering on two strings right next to each other. So, the major scales we know. There's one example, G major scale. Open, 1, 2, 3, open, 1, 2, 3. Same fingering on both strings. D, another example. Alright. A. Of course, the major scales that we all learned from the beginning, most likely, unless you just learned old-time fiddling first or something. But even old-time fiddlers, they put their violins in what's called cross-tuning a lot of time. G, D, G, D, so they can use the same fingers all the way across every string. So it's the whole violin is one big easy zone. Now, why do I make it easy? Is because not because I'm trying to dumb it down for you and think you're too stupid to get it or any silliness like that. It's because us humans have a tendency to think too much. And the more we think, the less the connection between the heart and the mind happens. And the less heartfelt your music sounds and feels to the audience. And you too, in my experience. So thinking is kind of the enemy of creativity. Yes, we have to think of some things. I'm holding the violin, I'm bowing the strings, you know. But hopefully you practice enough where you don't have to really think about that, because thinking about that can get in the way too. And you just be kind of a divine channel is the idea. And it gets a lot more fun, a lot more pleasurable. So I encourage you all to do that. Just take those scales. Now the thing I found in my little trademark thing is that there's certain blues scales that have easy zones as well. There's 3 of them I can think of right away. Open 1, 3 is the easy zone. Open 1, skips the 2, 3. Open 1, 3. The rub here is that the open string, in that case in the G and D, is not G. Is not the tonic, but the first finger A. This is what you can do. Open 1, 3. Right away, even simple things that start to sound cool. Let's try it on the D and A strings. This would be the key of E blues. Open 1, 3. Did you hear us sliding a little bit too? I like to slide the 5th note of the key. So in the key of E, what is the 5th note? E, F, G, A, B. Right straight across from the first note. This is the same for all violins and cellos. They're tuned in 5ths. What? Yes, 5ths. And we have the number system. G, A, B, C, D is the next string. D, E, F, G, A is the next string. A, B, C, D, E is the next string. They're all 5 notes apart from each other. So when you hear musicians speak the 5th, it's always straight across. You don't have to do any fancy math. You don't have to get your fingers out like I just explained it. You just know that straight across is 5 notes away. So if it's E1 on the E string, straight across is B1. And the 5th is one note you can dip and slide. That's called a blue note, that B flat, the flatted 5th in there. So that's a trick you can throw in right away. The other one we didn't do is B. B blues. Slide the 5th. That's sliding 1 to 1, 3. You do anything you want. The other blues scale, easy zone I found on the violin, that fits in first year, technique, is open low 2, 3. Now low 2 is a little bit more advanced for beginners, but it's the 2nd finger lower, as you may know. Close to 1. In this case, though, we skip the 1. Open, go right to the low 2, 3. The space away. Open, low 2, 3. This one, it is the key of G blues. So it does, just like G major, it does start on the open string, which is kind of neat and easy. The low 2 is hard for some beginners. So. The flat 5th is the low 4. Of course, the D blues and A blues. Another A blues. Notice we just covered an A blues in the open 1, 3. So we had open 1, 3. And then we had A blues here too. So A blues is the only one on the standardly tuned violin that has 2 easy zones. Open 1, 3 on the bottom 2 strings, and open low 2, 3 on the top 2 strings. Why is it that way? Well, it's exactly the letter names. So if you don't know letter names, you really should learn the letter names of the notes. People who only learn fiddler's tabs, I know, don't know the letter names, but you really be easier for you to communicate with other musicians, and me being an educator for you. That's the language that musicians use. So back to that for a second. So A blues is A, C, D, E, G, and then the continuing A, C, D, E, G. It's the same letter names. So the same, theoretically, the same letter names anywhere in any instrument, any position, anywhere in the whole neck is also A blues. All right. I'm just showing you the easy way so you can get to that state of not thinking too much right away. All right. I was going to tell you something else about that, but I can't. It slipped my mind already. All right. So blues scales are cool. Oh, this is what I was going to tell you. Blues scales. Why do I feature blues scales? One, they're rebellious sounding and cool sounding. That's one reason. We're all about the cool stuff here. That's the tagline of the whole site. The cool stuff the easy way, right? This all fits. Hearing a hissing back there. It's our water system in the closet over there has decided to do its self-cleansing thing. Figures, right? So I'm doing this. Anyways, I'll ignore that. Blues scales. You can get away with murder with blues scales. Why? Harmonic murder, let's call it, because blues scales fit over a lot of different chords, even if they're not always in the key. Remember we talked earlier on about the whole one scale fits all approach. Now with the major scales, and the examples that use a major scale, I decided to make sure that every chord of every note of every chord through the whole backing track of the piece fits that major scale exactly. I mean, everything sounds all good, fits together. Blues scales a little more raucous. They like to bang and bump against the chords behind it and stuff too. Example of this. Here's an A7 chord. But the blues scale against that, it has a C in it. Oftentimes in blues, there's a major chord. So the scale is down, 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 even though the chord is. So we got. It's kind of weird, isn't it? But for some reason, that particular clash, humans like. Now I'm playing all the above on the piano. The flatted third and the third at the same time. Often in the chord in blues, though, is the major third, but we go ba 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 da do da da ba da. Whoa, it's a bad clash we just hang on, isn't it? But if you go ba 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 ba, there's in the flat fifth as well. Ba dee da ba do ba da do against that chord. Yuck by itself. But all saying, oh, that sounds cool. Those two clashes, the flat third against the third in the chord, and the flatted fifth against the fifth in the chord, we kind of go, oh, that's cool. Other clashes, not so much. Other clashes are not so cool. But there's something about the blues as some kind of universal magic. I teach the blues scales as a great entryway in the book. There's a chapter on major scale, easy zones. There's a chapter on 0, 1, 3 blues scales, and there's a chapter on 0, low 2, 3 easy zone scales. So check out those things. All those things are on the site as well. If you're an AAP member, you have access to all that. If you're a free member, you have access to at least sneak peeks about many of them, and I think at least one in your free dozen lessons. So I hope you find this stuff helpful and you get the idea. Because somebody asked me once, if I had to learn one thing to increase my coolness factor on the violin, what would it be? I'd say blues scales, for sure. Blues scales is it. Blues scales, like I said, you can get away with murder. You can fit it over major scale, major chords, minor chords. You can, even in gypsy jazz, which is not necessarily really bluesy, it draws from the blues. And I'll throw in the blues at the end of a phrase. So I'll be doing some gypsy stuff. Let's see, which uses a different scale, harmonic minor. And I'll put a little blues riff at the end. So these blues scales will continue into more advanced stuff too. It's always something to draw on. Get down, man, get down. And it does pull us down into some human level. It's cool, those clashes. All right, what else is on my list here? Oh, I get questions about this, and one of the first ones was from member Nate. I appreciate it, Nate. He goes, how come when you play it sounds alive and beautiful, and when I play it sounds like what do you say, a flounder left on the beach too long? I get a kick out of that. Thank you for the compliment and your comment. And I will be developing a whole course based on these concepts, how to make your violin come alive. The violin is revered as an expressive instrument the world over. I don't even get it. There's others that are expressive too, but one of the reasons the violin is so expressive is because of the bow. So the bow is the main thing about how do you make it come alive. When we breathe and speak, there's inflections, and we put more breath into it at certain times, and we can squeeze our diaphragm and lungs. Hey, yeah, that's the thing, right? Oh, yeah. And we can go up and down with our voice and make different tones. Well, if you're just kind of hanging on with your fists and sawing back and forth and never changing anything, you're going to sound kind of dead. Never changing. And there's many exercises you can do. So I'm developing a course. The running title of it will be Violin Alive. I think that'd be a pretty good one. Let me know if you got ideas for it. And some of the exercises to help students learn to relax with the bow and actually be flexible in their dynamics. Put your bow on a string, and if you're holding properly, it doesn't matter to me whether you put your thumb on the bottom of the frog like beginners do often, or on the stick, the more advanced way. By the way, if you do it on a stick, don't collapse your thumb inside out. That's a bad thing. You can hang onto the bow really hard, but it'll sound really hard. It'll be much more scratchy. So always keep everything as relaxed and flexible as you can. All joints moving. I know it's a classical thing, but it really works for having a smooth sound. So develop that. See how my hand is staying in one position and my fingers move. You can put your hand on a table. Try and work on this. It's very foreign for most people. You can lift the bow an inch or so, just without, and not this, not from the wrist, but from the fingers themselves. Like put the blade of your hand right on a table or something stationary, and move your fingers up and down a little bit, and adjust the bow so it's not just flopping all over the place. So keep it in a straight line. It's hard to do, but in the end, we want to have this like reeds in the ocean kind of thing when the waves go overhead, you know, that graceful. So the bow very loose for starters. Now, where was I? Oh, if you have a nice loose thing, you put the bow on a string, and to learn the proper things and muscles in the hands, fine muscles in your hands that you're using, very small muscles. Once your bow's on the string, lift up the pinky, lift up the ring finger, lift up the middle finger. Now, the index finger should be ahead of the thumb. And if you have the index finger wrapped, like the Russian grip that I use, and Yasha Heifetz and Itzhak Perlman use, Joe Venuti, those are three examples of famous guys who use the Russian grip, where it's not more in the tips or not the first knuckle, but let the first finger go right over to almost the second knuckle or second knuckle, so it really kind of wraps. That does most of the work. You don't need anything else, really, and these are just fluff and extra control. So if you can practice playing with just the thumb curved, you know, not this, that'll be a death grip. It'll sound like it. Keep this always curved, keep the thumb more on its tip, and wrap that first finger around. Now, of course, the bow can drop, but it'll be on the string, so it'll keep it from dropping. So will you have any control to lift? No, you need the pinky to lift, but it's not the exercise here. Put it on the string, so the string is holding it up for you, so it doesn't fall to the floor. Take all the last three fingers off. The index, do not do the index finger with the thumb. This is senseless. That's not the way you hold the bow. The first finger all the way up the second knuckle about, and out there on the wrapping or whatever leather you got there on your instrument. I got a piece of rubber in mine. So bow on the string, relaxed grip, lift, 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 and keep only the index and thumb on the bow. If you just bow like this, you'll have less control for sure, but if you can keep it in the right spot without, if you're bowing crooked, bow all over the place. If you're pulling back towards your fanny, you'll be getting rosin on your fingers. If you're pushing out too far, you'll be poking yourself in the eye. So it's going to give you a good practice stroke. Just practice stroking open strings and making sure the bow is not traveling all over the place, just staying right in the middle of the opening. That's one lesson you can get from this. Practice awareness of the whole stroke, from frog to tip. Yes, you'll lose control when you come up to the frog. It's okay. Do the best you can. Because when you really play later, you'll have other fingers to help control. But we're not worried. We're just learning. We're working on learning the right stuff. Which muscles actually do the stuff? People get, they get the whole grip on there, and it's a grip. That's why they sound scratchy or stiff. You want to be loose. Let the bow move a little bit in the fingers. It's okay. So that's one thing. Another thing you can do while you have the same bow hold, is bow presses. I've done lessons about this on the site, so check it out. Simple that. Use the opposing force of the thumb and the index finger, kind of push down with the index finger and stiffen the thumb a little bit so that it lets you push down. So maybe the thumb comes up, they're opposing force, but you're pressing the stick right onto the string so it touches the hair. I would say do that at least 50 reps, like doing push-ups, or we'll call them bow presses. Or if you're into bodybuilding, you do light reps. This is not a heavy thing, but you're training that muscle. A lot of it is just muscle training, muscle memory. Then when you're going to play, try and do some pulses while you're in your strokes. It's harder going up bow for sure. Once these muscles in this hand are starting to learn the intricacies, it's the muscles. If you can feel it over here, I feel it, on the side there, a little bit in the bottom of the thumb here, a little bit into this first finger here and there. Those muscles in this area are learning to work the violin bow so it becomes alive. You can get dynamics within a stroke. That's the good stuff. And then when you want to... So, and it's not just jazzy stuff you can do this with. You can do everything. Classical music, anything. If you listen to Bruce Molsky, old-time fiddle superstar as far as old-time fiddling goes and how big that market is. But anyways, he's a superstar, and that he does all kinds of bow quirks and strokes. He holds the bow kind of weird way out like this, but they even do pulses within a bow stroke. See that? So, I like old-time fiddling. I'm not an old-time fiddler, but I like old-time fiddling best as far as the fiddling world goes. When I first heard Bruce play at a American String Teachers Association conference, I went, "What's that? That's cool!" It's got a deep groove, and usually the backgrounds are simple. Sometimes they're modal chords. Just one chord jams. It's that's kind of like the jazz rock band I played, but only on one fiddle, and he had a pulse that was kind of a deep groove, almost like he had a drummer in his belly. I dig that. It's kind of non-thinking but cool. It features blues scales a lot, and this is these tunes are a couple hundred years old. I think it's pretty neat. So there's a deep well there I'll be pulling from. All right, let's move on. So maybe that's morphing into level 2 stuff there, how to get your violin to come alive. And we talked about chords a little bit. Level 2 players, in general, the attitude behind, the philosophy behind the level 2, or Gigger level, as I called it on the site in a few spots, is take it beyond the one scale fits all over the whole mess, and there's a little bit more to think about. And it's called the roots music approach as well. Roots music, as I call it, is anything that has like 3 chords in the background, which is like 90% of all music, really. Even Mozart, a lot of times, just in his early stuff, just not very many chords. I've covered these kind of things elsewhere, and those 3 chords that are most of the time are the 1, the 4, and the 5. Now, if you're not familiar with chord numbers, they follow the note numbers. So, and everything is named after a major scale. Why a major scale? Not because it's the coolest scale on the planet, but because it's the most common. At least in the last 500 years or so, it rose to the top as the one that everybody uses all the time, the do, re, mi. In fact, even in our culture, when somebody, even if it's not a musician, says, you know, I've heard this comment, I thought it was pretty cool. You know, you learn some of the basics and then just do, re, mi it from there. So you get things in order and go through the steps. I heard that spoken in relation to car mechanics. You just do, re, mi it from there. That's just go through the steps. I thought that was pretty cool. So it's even part of our culture. The do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, as many people sing. Now the solfege system has kind of fallen out of favor in America, I think. Some people learn it. I didn't learn it in school that way, but it's a useful system. It's more of a European thing, I think. In America here, we go by the number system, and it's pretty universal. The major scale has become the standard. It's the standard bearer, and we compare all other scales to it, all right? Because the easiest one is the most common scale, so we gave each note of the scale a number. So open is not open because nobody cares other than violinists whether it's an open string. And the first finger is not, that's not G1 as fiddler tab people know, beginning violinists. This would be the first note of the scale, the second note of the scale, the third note of the scale, the fourth note of the scale, the fifth note of the scale, the sixth note of the scale, the seventh note of the scale, and the eighth note of the scale, which is the octave of the first one. Alright? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It has nothing to do with your finger numbers. So fiddlers tab people might have a harder time with this because they're so used to counting their fingers. But this is a more universal language. Why is it more universal? Because other instruments like saxophones, when we get into the wind instruments, they're tuned crazy. For us, an A is an A. It's a universal A. Concert pitch, they call it. For a trumpet player, though, you tell them to play what they learned as A, and it comes out as RG. I don't know where the system came up with. I don't know why the horns have, you know, developed that way. The same thing with a tenor saxophone. It's called a B flat instrument. If you tell them to call what they learned as A, it comes out as RG. It comes down one note. Instead of, this is a C instrument, we call it. Any concert pitch is called a C instrument, and an A is an A. And but on the winds, it's a little different. There's B flat instruments. There's E flat instruments. Alto sax is an E flat instrument. So when you tell them to play their C, what they learned as C, it comes out as our E flat. Weird, huh? French horn is an F instrument. Let's see, usually that's about it. So there's F, E flat, and B flat. Let's see, clarinet is B flat. Soprano saxophone is B flat. See what else. Some of them are C. Trombone is a C instrument. When you play a C, it comes out as our C. Same thing with oboe. Flute is a C instrument. How this crazy non-standardized thing came in the wind family, I don't know. I used to think they were all just nuts. Until I'm not so sure that our A is the correct A either. That's a whole other subject. I think that our scale should be tuned with the cosmos, with the light colors. 7 colors of the rainbow should equal the 7 colors, 7 notes in our alphabet. And they don't exactly, and some words actually between what we call concert pitch and what this, you know, a tenor sax calls their pitch. So maybe we're all right, we're just all a little off. So to compensate, sometimes I'll tune my instruments. If I'm playing with a bunch of wind players, I'll tune my fiddle down a whole step. And then when they say this is in the key of C, I'm actually thinking in the key of C with them. Now, most sax players have to learn this double thing. They have to learn to communicate with us C instruments. But that's the way it is. Anyway, so before I get too crazy here, we were talking about the note number system, even though that's the reason why the note numbers are more universal, because if we're talking the key of G and we're talking the third note, we tell the saxophone player, play the third of the scale there. And no matter what scale they're on, they'll play the third note in whatever key they're thinking in, right? Because they have to think up a step to compensate for their instruments being tuned down a step. So if we're in the key of G, they'll be thinking in the key of A to make it sound the same as us. I think that's the way it works, yeah. Double thinking for me. But anyway, so when you say the third of the scale, it's universal. No matter what key you're thinking in. That's where the note number systems comes in really handy. All right? So now, not only is there a note number system, there's a chord number system that follows it as well. I've covered these things on the site. If we have the C major scale, C is a great explainer on the piano because it's all white keys. There is a chord chords are basically every other note of the scale. So 1, 3, 5. All right? Sounds beautiful to us. If we get notes that are too close together, yeah, kind of clashy. But if we spread them out, just like people, if we get a little distance from each other, we're all cool. If we get too close, then we get ornery. Anyways, music is no different. So every other note makes a chord. Now if we start from the first note of the scale and go every other note, that's the first chord of the key. If we start from the second note and go every other note, that's the second chord of the key. Third chord, fourth chord, fifth chord, etc. There's 7 chords that can be made of a major scale. And the 3 most important ones are the first chord, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord. The first chord, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord. I'll say it a few times. Burn that into your skull. The first chord, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord. There's the fourth chord again, and the 1 chord. 1, 4, 5. I'll say it again. 1, 4, 5. What did I say? I said 1, 4, 5. Right? So for you, second tier intermediate players, becoming aware of the 1, 4, 5 chords in the background of tunes becomes important. And this is Mozart. This is Happy Birthday. This is blues. This is most fiddle music has 3 chord backups, 3 chord harmony chords in the background. If you look through the Fiddler's Fake Book, which I highly recommend you all get, I may look into maybe carrying that in the store. Either way, get it on Amazon for now if you'd like. It's an excellent resource. It's got 500 tunes. The guy did a scholarly job of putting it together. And if you look through those 500 tunes, it's rare to find a tune that does not have 3 chords in it, or less. There's a few more modern bluegrass tunes he threw in there that have 5 or 6 chords sometimes in them, but that's a rarity in fiddle tunes. So I just kind of call it all roots music. It includes country music. It includes folk tunes. It includes Cajun tunes and most things. On 90% of music, I say, have only 3 chords in the background. If you know those 3 chords and can navigate them by ear and by feel and a little bit of knowledge, you're in the club, man. When I joined the Zydeco band, I've told this story elsewhere too. I was a very trained player and just come off the whole gamelan experience of playing Newport Jazz Fest and playing high-level gigs and stuff, and it was neat. I realized that the one scale fits all, the blues scale thing, I sounded a little cheesy. It didn't sound authentic in the Cajun style in my first few gigs. And I'm going, I realized I had to rethink it a little bit, and I ended up using a different scale called a cousin of the blues scale called major pentatonic. It's still a 5-note penta scale, 5-note scale, but instead, here's your lesson on this. It's 1, 2, 3, skips the 4th note, 5, 6, skips the 7th note. It's actually related to the blues scale. If you start on a different note, it is the blues scale. We won't get into that right here now. Just learn it from the tonic. So if it's G, it's G, A, B, D, E, another G. Right away, it sounds easy, it sounds fun, it sounds folk, like you've heard this before. Yes, even wind chimes are tuned to this scale. So anywhere on G, let's see, G, A, B, D, E. G, A, B, D, E, anywhere. G, A, B, D, E. Got it? G, A, B, D, E. G, A, B, D, E. G, A, B, D, E. G, A, B, D, E, G. Anywhere. So, does this have an easy zone? Well, yes, it does. Check it out. G, A, B, D. And there's a D, E below that. Open 1, 3, open 1, 3. It's the same thing as the E blues. It's just the G will be the tonic. Instead of That's E blues. Here's G major pentatonic. They're cousins, all right? They're the same notes, just a different tonic. So when I started playing Cajun Zydeco music, which I love, it's a humbling style to play because it's not about you, the player, and how great you play and how, like other styles are, how great your solos are. It's all about whether people on the dance floor are boogieing or not. If they're dancing, you're doing your job. They don't care how great you play. They just want to know that you got a good groove and, you know, you get to use your bow technique to get some accents and make them want to dance. That's cool. It reminds me of what music's all about. Anyway, so I highly recommend Cajun stuff too. Anyways, Cajun music, 3 chords all night. When I played with Leron Zydeco and the Hot Tamales, we'd play 3 to 4 hour gigs. And there might be 1 or 2 songs that had a 4th chord in it. That's it. All night. So all you had to know is the 1, 4, 5 in all keys. Right? There's only 12 keys. So it's not an insurmountable amount of knowledge, and there's mostly keys that are popular. So it's not even like you got to know every key. It's helpful if you know every key, but in fiddle music, G is very popular, D is very popular, A is very popular. If you know those 3 keys to start with, you're in the club, man. So what is the 1, 4, 5 in each key? You should know this. And this is a lingo that you need to know when musicians say, sit in with us, sit in. You got to know what to do. It's easy, just 1, 4, 5, just follow us. This is what they're talking about, all right? That means it's got 3 chords. You just follow, and if you can hear which of the 3 chords they're on, which is not as hard as it seems. If you don't know how to do it, it's like, oh my God, how am I going to know? It's like some magic. I might have to be born with some kind of gifted ear. No. If you know this knowledge and can kind of hear how far, the key to that is listening to the bass player. And that was a big lesson for me. I couldn't figure out how to magically hear all this stuff that other players could hear, and I asked a great sax player one time how to do it. And he goes, I don't know, I listen to bass. It was like hitting myself in the forehead. I'm a bass player too. I should have known that. I thought it was like cheating. But no, the bass player's job is to lead everyone from chord to chord by the butt, by the tonic, by the root. You just kind of keep an ear on the bass player. You can boom, 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 forward, doom, doo, doo, ding, da, doo, da, da. They even walk down. They call it in country music and roots music. They call it walking down or walk up to the 4th. So they might go, root 5th on C, on the 4, 5, root 5th, 1. You kind of hear it, can't you? In simple music, it's even easier to follow. So I suggest you start with styles like that. Old country, Zydeco music, folk music, and listen to the bass player, even bluegrass. Listen to the bass the best you can. That's the key. Now each of those 3 chords also has a feeling. Check it out. 1, 4, 5. You'll hear vocal instructors do this, by the way. They'll go. Ready to sing, everybody? Why they do that? Because the 1, 4, and 5 actually cover every note of the major scale. So you kind of get the whole, you hear it all in one quick thing. That's another subject. But anyways, the 1 chord is relaxed. You could start there, you could end there, you could rest there. When you go to the 5 chord, there's a certain this fisted zing to it, especially when it has the 7th note in it of the 5 chord. Well, don't worry about that for now, but often it does. Makes it even stronger. It always is the strongest second last chord. It always wants to go back to 1. Right? 5 leads to 1. Mozart knew this, as well as Jimi Hendrix. 1 is relaxed. Can you hear that? Can you feel it? 5 is intense. 1 is relaxed. Strongest second last chord always wants to lead to 1. You got that? All right. The other one that's left out is the 4. It's kind of a raising but soft raise, isn't it? Here's the 1, relaxed, and it's right. It just kind of lifts it, doesn't it? Lifts the feeling. And can you feel that? And the 5. A little bit of intensity to it. The 4 is that raise before it floats down to 1. There's a feeling in your gut, isn't it? How that works, I have not a clue, but that's the feeling that everybody feels. If you listen for that, you don't even need to pay attention to the bass player either. You kind of know. But the bass player is the best way to do it. All the above. So if you learn to do those by ear and by feel, by gut, you can know your way through anything. Pop, tunes, anything. You can find your way around. They're the main 3 chords. All right? That's important stuff. Knowing the number system, knowing the chord number system, and knowing the feeling of the 1-4-5, you can go a long ways. Now another question I get often is for you gigger level people out there is how do you make your tunes sound fiddly? That fiddle sound. I did a whole one of the earliest videos I ever did on the site way back when I first started filming a few years back, maybe 4, almost 5 years ago now. Was how do you get that fiddle sound? And what do you mean by that? Well, in fiddling we use drone strings. Drone strings are a little more theory to figure it out for a second, but what it is we drone open strings nearby along with the melody as we finger it. Simple as that. But those drone strings need to follow and fall into the key that you're playing in to sound, have the right sound for the style. The notes to follow are the root, the 1, and the 5th. 1 and 5. Those are always the best drone notes in any fiddle tune. So if you're playing Mary Had Little Lamb, I just played it in the key of A. If you want to fiddleize it, you throw in A strings, open A strings wherever you can. Now most of it will not be that for this particular song because it's all on the A string. Or the second option is the 5th note of the key. The 5th note of the key of A is A, B, C, D, E. E, right? We have an E string nearby, right next to the A string. So it's a little tricky to finger on the A string and let the E string ring along without letting it squeak by some of your skin touching the E string by accident. But here it is. That's kind of cool, right? All of a sudden it gets fiddly rather than... And then we... So in the earlier example I went to a double drone. So 4th finger E with open E. They sound subtly different. They're never ever perfectly in tune, but that's cool. It's like a chorus of singers singing all the same note. It doesn't sound the same as one person singing. It sounds like 2 violins. You slide it in until it sounds right. That's a technique to try. How I do it physically, I let my hand back here glide along the back of the neck as a little bit of leverage there. So you have to think, you have to think you shouldn't touch and you'll overslide it. I have a point of reference in. Keep that skin touching back there. You kind of go, oh yeah, there I am, and you know exactly how far to stretch that pinky. By feel and by ear. So try that a bunch of times. It's a great thing. There's only 3 of these special, very special things on the violin that make it sound fiddly. There is double E's, double A's, and double D's. So, classical musicians spend a lot of time avoiding that stuff a little bit, but in fiddle music, we embrace it. It's very unique to the instrument. It's only 3 notes on the whole instrument can do that. So because of that is one of the reasons that all the tunes are in the key of G, D, and A in the fiddle world, so that we can do those 3 tricks. So try those 3 tricks and throw them in along with the open strings. So if it's in, and as another example, if this tune was in the key of D, D is the 1, A is the 5th, right? It's always straight across. Open D, open A. So D, E, F, G, A. 5 notes away. So if you're playing a song in the key of D, let's say Angelina Baker. There's the basic raw melody. Angelina Baker's is a whole lesson here on the site too. Key of D. I'm playing on the A string, so you throw an open D wherever you can. Now at this point it goes on the E string, so I throw in the other option, open A. back to open D, back to open A, back to open D. Simply improvising, throwing in those drones wherever is possible. Whenever you have an adjacent string, it's either the root or the fifth, throw it in. Simple as that. It sounds much more interesting than, which is okay, but so you notice I put a little G in that one spot. The chord in the song actually changes to a G. And if you're aware of the chord changes, you can throw in extra stuff like that. Just tip the bow. That's okay. Just so happens in a G chord, there is a D note, right? Every other note of the scale, if you're 1, 3, 5 in the key of G, a D is in there. So it's not a harm to do all Ds either in that particular song. So a little bit of knowledge. I just kind of get you started. This is things people ask me about. All right? Let's move on to some more advanced stuff. Level 3, or the artist level, as many of the lessons are called on the site. Let's see here. So there's one thing that an artist level musician needs to learn. It's more of an inward game. Once you know your stuff, are comfortable with being a creator rather than a curator of a museum. By the way, this is something for the beginners too. I get people who come to me and say, you know, it's cool that I know some fiddle tunes, but I want more. I'm just so tired of having to memorize everything. Somebody told me this recently in a comment on the site. I'm so tired of having to memorize tunes and then remember them as I perform them. And it's just kind of tiring, brain tiring. We don't want music to be brain tiring. We want it to be fun and joyful and light, right? Especially in the brain and the heart. So, once you learn how to jam, you don't have to memorize a whole lot of stuff. You just make it up on the spot. It's much more relaxing. I love it. Maybe I'm a jazz musician and blues musician and improvising musician because I'm too lazy to memorize stuff. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Anyways, but what that leads to, this whole shift for people, is it leads to paying attention to the inner. Their inner voice. Maybe it's in your head, maybe it's in your heart, maybe it's all the both, maybe they're communicating with each other. I hope so. If there was one thing I could tell anyone at any level, but especially artist level students, is trust your own inner voice first and foremost at all times. Say it again. Trust your own inner voice first and foremost at all times. And make that your passion, your mission, in your playing at least, and probably in your life. It takes a while to develop this strength, this connection, and this confidence in that. And this actually, the word that was tough for me, obedience to that inner voice. Being a rebellious person, and being from my father who was a rebellious person, and my grandfathers were a little bit rebellious, you know, and my mother's side of the family is a bunch of motorheads. They're rebellious. They do their own thing. You know, that was in my bloodline to be rebellious. But learning obedience. Obedience to what? Obedience to the man? No, I'm definitely not that. Obedience to my own inner voice? Yes. It was a hard one for me to swallow at first. Trust it. In my experience, whenever I did not trust it, it was always disappointment and misery, musically. It's like, oh, I missed that beautiful thing. I heard it and I didn't do it, and the drummer did that same exact thing. It would have been magic if I just followed my gut, you know. It's always a bummer if you don't follow the inner, especially in creativity. Even if you're playing classical pieces that are learned and memorized ahead of time, if you play them as if you are being dictated them from the angels, they come across with more authority, and people tend to listen harder. There's something, I don't know how it works, but even if you're playing learned pieces, if you learn this and get good at trusting that and playing it exactly placed as you've already pre-heard it a few seconds ahead of time, everything comes across much better. And as far as improvising goes, that's the real stuff. That's the real stuff. That's it. You are great if you are completely at one with your own inner voice and playing only what you've pre-heard a split second before. That doesn't matter if it's music. If you're an artist, the most lauded artist can paint without thinking, all right? And they're the most famous because there's something in human beings that want that. We all want that. We all want to be in the moment, in the flow of creative juices, right? At all times in our life, whether we're talking to somebody at work at the cooler, or whether we're driving our car, we want to have the steering wheel be light in our hands, and we're aware of what's on the road. We drive safer. So when we're worried and we're staring at the bug on the windshield, that we crash into something, right? So every part of life has this approach and this thing that can benefit in your life, and music is a great way to learn it. Music is a great teacher, and it's a great example of it. To be in the flow, to be a great improviser, to have the touch of greatness in your playing, you need to just completely learn to listen inside your head and trust. As I've told, this is maybe a level 2 kind of thing, a level 1 even, the human brain seems to hear in 3 different time zones all at once. It's kind of got this holographic nature. And there is some scientific evidence for this kind of thing now too. We hear what we hear as we hear it with our physical ears, of course. We also hear what we just heard still bouncing around in our head, or the idea of it still bouncing around in our brain after the fact. And as we all know, sometimes we got earworms, we can't get the tune out of our head, right? But in general, things that you just heard, still bounce around in your head. But the cool spot where musicians and all people probably really need to lie, this gets into a little bit of metaphysics, but it's coming around that it's a little more of hard science with people like heartmath.org. You can check them out. They're doing hard science tests to prove the connection of the heart to the mind, and that the heart is really in charge, not the mind. Pretty cool. They're proving this scientifically. The heart has a brain of its own and senses things 3 to 10 seconds before the brain does. Interesting. Like it's a psychic sensor of things in time. They know this by giving cards that are upset, and they have the biofeedback machines, and the heart knows when the upsetting picture is coming in their tests. There's a nice picture of birds and kids, and all of a sudden there'll be one that's jarring of something dead, or and your biofeedback, it buzzes the machines, and the heart ones sense that picture before it comes. Pretty fascinating. Humans, we have this thing that we know what's coming ahead of time if we pay attention. If we let the heart speak to the head, that's where intuition comes from. That's where this stuff comes from. It's more of an advanced foo-foo, woo-woo, some people call it, but now it's coming around hard science around the same subject. I think it's completely fascinating. It proves what musicians and artists already know, right? So, how do you put this where the rubber meets the road? You practice enough so you're not thinking about this stuff, how to bow. You're there. If you're an artist level player, you're already there. Don't think about your playing. Don't worry about it. Worry is another blocker. If you're concerned, you're on the gig, you're playing, and someone is in the audience that you know and you want to impress, forget it. It's all over, right? You never play as good. Nobody does. And that could be anybody in whatever trips you up. It could be your mother. Oh, my mom hasn't been here in 6 months. I got to play my newest stuff. I've got to play my best for her now. You're done. You're never going to play your best. You got to forget that your mom's there. Just play. Play your best and be in tune with the inner, and it'll always guide you to the best stuff at the right exact time. It might be someone famous in the audience or someone you really look up to. Oh, Joe is here. I got to do good now. And forget it. It's all over. You're never going to do as good, because you'd be self-conscious and you then break that connection. And that's not just you that'll have trouble with that, or a novice performer. It even happens to top professionals. I heard my fellow Buffalonian Billy Sheehan, the rock bass god man, say in an interview one time, he's a Scientologist and highly respects Chick Corea, who is, as many of you know, I've met stuff a few times. And another Scientologist he is, and so he has this high respect for Chick Corea and his playing ability and his beliefs and stuff. That's cool. I'm not into Scientology myself. It's interesting, but it's not my thing. Anyways, although scientists are really driven people to do well, and they're driven personally, which is I have respect for. Anyways, not to talk different religions here, but Billy Sheehan said that Chick Corea was at one of his gigs, and he was a mess. He was nervous, he was self-conscious, and here's Billy, who's played in front of 80,000 people at stadiums and stuff all over the world, playing with David Lee Roth, and he's like a a superstar over in Japan and all this stuff, you know. It's like on the cover of Bass Player magazine. He should have no worries about anybody being in the game, but even he got tripped up by having someone. So we all got somebody, something that can trip us up, and you know, being a true sage is to have none of that affect us at all. We play great all the time. But that's, you know, we're talking maybe decades of practice, and it's just something is a constant upkeep in our brain, you know, and we always get better at it. I work on it all the time too. The bar does raise over the years for me. You know, it used to be a good gig was I was listening and in tune, you know, 75% of the time. Now it's most of the time up in the 90th percentile. And in the bands I play in, we'd check with each other after the gig. How was your flailing factor, we'd say. Flailing, I mean, were you just flailing licks and hoping for the best, you know, your riffs, or were you really in tune with the divine, you know? And as a band, we'd go, this one wasn't so good, this was down to 70%, we didn't play that great. The audience still loved it. They didn't know the difference always, but I bet they feel the difference when we're really on and we're really tapped in and tuned in. That's the difference between greatness and mediocrity. And I'll say this, it's just logic. With my experience now, I'm in my 50s. I've been playing since I was 5. In my experience, everything goes way, way better, and people feel you better when you're really tuned in like that. It really sells your performance in a very subtle way that people pick up on. So if you can get good at this, it's really a good thing to do. And like I say, the logical part of it is, of course, it might have taken me 20 years to really say, okay, that's it. I'm never going to second guess my inner voice ever again, kind of thing. It only take you maybe a year or two to get really good at it because I've told you it. Right? That's the way it works. If you know the goal, it's a lot easier to get to the goal, right? It's just logic. So I'm telling you, in my experience, if you just trust your inner voice and learn with a vengeance only to follow that and don't let anything else distract you from it. Anybody famous, your mom, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, you know, somebody you think is cute, anybody you want to impress, you know, some hot chick, whatever it does, don't let any of that affect you, and to play music because that's all you hear and your burning desire in your head. Hone in on that and you will be great. Be great a lot sooner than me. All right? So I'm here to tell you that's the magic. Pull yourself up and you'll catch up to me and help me pull me up further too. So let's all do this together. All right? How are we doing for time here? What's the clock saying on the camera? I'm going a while here, so maybe I'll cut it there. In closing, you know, we'll learn other things. Chopping, I can maybe cover in other things, how to chop. It's cool, it's like beatboxing, man. There's lessons on that in the site too. That's something more advanced, but we get that as well. I appreciate you being part of this whole grand experiment with the Fiddle Jam Institute. Excuse me. This is my life's mission, I think, and what I learned as I'm studying marketing, as I'm getting ready to really start advertising the site. Thank you for being part of the guinea pigs. I just built this up to a good platform and have all the pieces in place. I think like now in the next month or two. I realized that I listen to the gurus and the teachers about marketing, and they say, can you get down to your core message? And if I could say what I'm trying to do with the Fiddle Jam Institute, who am I trying to reach, and what am I trying to teach those people that I'm trying to reach? If I could put it in one sentence, it's I want violinists and fiddlers to be comfortable and be prepared to play in a band situation. Anybody can play at home in their bedroom and learn and study, but the real magic is when you play in a group, and it's the real life benefit. There's magic that happens amongst players when you're playing together, music together. It's the live buzz thing. And violinists especially are kind of clueless to that, and when you're trained to play in an orchestra, you just play the notes on the page, and you don't necessarily are never taught to really focus on the feeling of the music. Some do, and they're the ones that usually rise to the top because they have this little subtle key. But a lot of classically trained players don't ever get that magic buzz because they're just concentrating on playing the music on the page, the dots on the page. The music comes from the outside in rather than from the inside out. And when you do it from the inside out, everybody benefits more, I think. You and the audience. And so what I'm really trying to do is teach people, if I could reach people and get you prepared to sit in with a band. That's it. I don't care if it's a rock band, a folk group, at a, or just a gathering at a potluck picking party, which happened. You bring a dish to pass and bring your fiddle. Let's play some tunes. And there's a lot of that in the country, especially I'm in Florida. Down here, there's a lot of that. It's not really my thing, but I'll show up to some of these parties and play some fiddle tunes and hang out with people. It's kind of fun sometimes. But it's pretty loose, and if you can at least do that. So I want to train people to be able to sit in, even if they don't know the tune. Somebody knows you play the fiddle, and you're out here in a blues band. And, oh, get your fiddle out, man! Get your fiddle, get your fiddle. People love the fiddle. Sit in with us. You go, I don't know what to do, and you run away, right? You say, oh, I don't know, no, not me. I don't know, I'm not prepared. A million excuses. If I can make people be ready to sit in with a band, I've done my job, I think. And you can sit in with all kinds of bands once you know a few simple things like, what is the 1-4-5? All kinds of styles have only 1-4-5 in them. And if you have your gear ready and your head ready and a little bit of knowledge ready, you can sit in with a blues band, a rock band, a country group, even a jazz group if it's not too complicated, if you only know some of it. A folk group, a Cajun band. There's a lot of stuff you can do and enjoy in life just because you know a little bit of stuff and are guided through the process of having your head ready, your heart ready, and your fingers ready, and your mind, things in place. So I realized getting people ready to sit in with a band is probably the core of what I'm trying to do at the Fiddle Jam Institute, and all the details surrounding that. That is the new world frontier for violinists who are only trained classically or only play fiddle tunes in their bedroom or something. If you can sit with the band, all kinds of opportunities open up for you, and it's really cool. So because of that, I will be starting a course too. I'm kind of excited about this. I don't know when I'm going to release it yet. It'll be called the Sit-In Situation. I think it's a clever name. Let me know your thoughts on that. I think it's a cool thing. And it'll be a good course. The courses, as you may know, I will sell separately in the school store, and it'll be available for lifetime access separately from the site. People will be able to access it. Be a part within the site, but people have an area that they can, even public can buy the course. Some people are funny about the monthly recurring membership thing. I understand that. So access to the library is one thing, and it's an adjunct to the course as well. And these courses will be a specialized topic. And one of the big ones I think is going to be for me, because it involves what my core oomph is for this site, is getting people ready to sit in with a band. It's what you need to do. It's what the violin world needs, right? Anybody can play in an orchestra and play the notes on the page, but if you can play in a group, it's fun. It's all good stuff. All right, so I blabbed on and on endlessly here. Not endlessly, it's about to end. Is there anything else? No, not too much. Sit-in situation. Learn to trust your gut. Check out the Riffmaster Pro software. Highly recommend it. What else on my list did I went through? One-room schoolhouse. All those lessons are set up that way. And watch for, I'll have some announcements about, I've been goofing in my shop as I have time on some new inventions. A new kind of pickup I'm working on. I'll tell you guys about it first. I want a violin to be able to stand next to any electric guitar and wail through the standard guitar amp. And currently, we have to do gymnastics with our tone circuitries and stuff to sound decent and pleasing with the electric violin. Most gear is not made for it. Most gear is guitar oriented, and I want the violin to be able to step up in that world. The violin technology, electric violin technology, is about 50 years behind guitar, and I hope to be a part in helping bring that up to date. So watch for some. I'll very excitedly show you my experiments soon enough. All right. So many blessings. Play music. Make the world a better place to be. Be in the flow, because music helps show you the way. All right. Love you guys, and please send me any comments and questions you have for the next open office hour. All right. Love you. Talk to you later.